أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. The podcast family. There's an echo. About that. We're gonna fix it. All right. Assalamu alaikum. Am I still echoing? Do you hear an echo, Naima?
I don't.
Okay, I hear an echo. I don't know if it's coming from your side. I'm curious if I mute you. Okay, it's gone. Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Dope Muslim Woman podcast family. Little technical difficulties. This is your girl, the host of the Dope Muslim Woman, Sabria Mills, and I am excited to be here. We are in season 8, almost 6 long years of the Dope Muslim Woman, 8 seasons. We are on the edge, and we've taken tons of breaks, mashallah. We are coming back with a continuation of a conversation. I would just say, as you enter into the stream, please go ahead and say, give your salams, share the podcast, inshallah ta'ala. All right. I'm excited about this. Wa alaikum salam, Melody. Thank you for giving your salams. Share the podcast. I am really excited about this because if you guys remember, we had a podcast about two weeks ago, and it was called Don't Belittle Red Riding Hood with Imam Amin. And it was explosive. We had a very interesting conversation. The dynamic is always polarizing between myself and Sheikh Amin. And he made a very polarizing statement. He said, all men are wolves. So ladies, don't belittle Red Riding Hood. So we couldn't have just left it at that place. We had to get a dope Muslim woman's perspective on this topic. And this woman who I'm about to introduce, she was also in the building, in the place when this comment was said, because we were all in Atlanta. And we can't wait to unpack it. So I am so thankful to be here. I have an incredible guest. I am excited to introduce her. She has been on the show before. She is, to me, one of the most profound thinkers, and when it comes to womanhood and just all things as it relates to just our elevation. Alhamdulillah, she runs the Lady Khadija Institute, and this institute is phenomenal, y'all. It is an institute that helps you work through the emotional barriers and your saboteurs so that you can elevate in life. And she works with business and money and all things for Muslim women. It's incredible. Not only that, I mean, she's done so many things. She's a community organizer for decades, an incredible mother of a couple of kids, a wife, just plays so many different roles. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Naima to the show. Assalamu alaikum, Naima.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. I'm super, super excited to be here. Thank you so much, Sabria. I love being able to share. So hopefully someone will be able to take something away from this. And if before we get started, if we can just make sure that we ask everyone, hey, think about what was your intention coming to this show today? Are you coming as Little Red Riding Hood? Are you coming as a wolf? Or are you coming to be that spectator? And whatever the intention is, hoping and praying that as you walk away, that you can take some information away that is going to be useful, not gossipy. So useful information is what we're looking for in this specific episode, especially a woman's perspective. So yeah.
A woman's perspective. Okay. So I'm going to open up this dialogue. So Naima, you remember when we had the intensive in Atlanta, the statement was made after a particular hadith, which was hadith 6 of the 40th hadith of Imam Nawawi. And it was talking about staying away from the doubtful matters.
Right.
And one of the doubtful matters that was mentioned was this idea of, like, I guess where he was going with it is that sometimes as women, we kind of lean into the chit chat with men, etc. And he said, all men are wolves. Don't be Little Red Riding Hood. So I want to just open up this discussion. I'm going to open up with just starting just a few lines from Little Red Riding Hood. And then we're going to stop at a certain point. So once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl who was loved by everyone, especially her grandmother. Her grandmother gave her a red velvet cap that looked so good on her that she wore it all the time. Everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said, "Here, Little Red Riding Hood, take this piece of cake and a bottle of drink to your grandmother. She is sick and weak, and these will help her feel better. Go before it gets too hot. And remember to walk slowly and carefully. Don't run off the path, or you might fall and break the bottle. When you get to her house, say good morning and don't look around too much. I will be careful, said Little Red Riding Hood. And she set off with the treats. And again, there are many versions of Little Red Riding Hood. But I wanted to ask you this path, because this was mentioned a lot in the other podcasts.
Yeah.
This mention of the path. Stay on the path. From your perspective, what does the path represent for women?
So in the Little Red Riding Hood, the path represents safety. It symbolizes safety for women. It symbolizes divine guidance. It symbolizes obedience. And when you go against all three of those, you find yourself straying, right? So we have to think of like the path as the Sirat al-Mustaqim, right?
Yeah.
And Allah says, of course, in Surah Al-Fatiha, guide us on the straight path. So when you find yourself on a path, what we have a tendency to do is to stray from the path. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, why do we stray away from the path? And really, it has a lot to do with nafs. Our own nafs, our own ego, our own self is what leads the soul away from the path. And so when women begin to kind of stray off the path, why do we do that? Right? So if the path is for safety, divine guidance, obedience, it represents like clarity, protection, really divine alignment. Why do we get off the path? Why do we stray as women? So I like to say there are so many different things of why we stray. And so in the last episode, the Imam says that he told his own wife, I'm a wolf, right? And immediately I thought about what was her response in terms of her head. What was she thinking in her head when he said that? And really, that's the thing that women have to be conscious of. When you are approached by a wolf or wolf tendencies are before you, what is your first response? Is it that you seek guidance? Is it that you seek obedience? Or is it that you are looking to be strayed? And so one of the things about straying is that, you know, we have this desire for ease or speed, and straying is a shortcut.
Yeah.
Right? So shortcuts are tempting. There's no effort, you know, it's immediate, it's gratifying. So what do? We look for the ease or the speed as women. We do this when it comes to relationships, of course. We also have the influence of society, social media. We're looking for, how do we stray from the straight path? Well, like the wolf, we're looking for sweet words. We're looking for the romanticism. We're looking for the rebellion, the pleasure, the self-indulgence. And again, straying off of the path. We're looking for the need for belonging because we're lonely. So the path can feel isolating. But the shortcut offers what? Connection. So what do? We take the shortcut. Oh, he's just texting me at 10 o'clock at night, and these are just text messages, but it's unsafe. And we do it anyway, right? We do it anyway. And we indulge in these things that, again, we're looking for gratification. And we have to understand and think of, are we trusting the appearances over the truth? And that's where the wolves come in.
Absolutely. I wanted to just ask you straight up, like, did you personally agree with the statement that all men are wolves? Do you agree with that statement?
I can see how men can be wolves, but just like even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you know, he made his jinn Muslim, right? And so it's really the ability for the man to always be in his conscious center. And in being his conscious center, he knows that he is responsible. And I think that what happens is that women, when we see the wolf, we're thinking that everything is okay. And oh, whatever he says is all the truth. And because of how he presents himself. And he may be manipulating us, right? But it sounds good and it feels good. And for some of us, it is familiar. And so we keep going down these same tracks of, oh, well, you know, I didn't really think he was bad. He's a good guy. And then also we have this whole concept that women also have is like the bad boys, right? So I was talking to a couple of friends before. We were talking about this whole bad boy concept of how women want bad boys. What does that mean, right? So it's this, well, really, I want him to be a little street, but I really want him to be Muslim. And, you know, uh, if he can be both of those for me, then he's really the ideal man for me. And I'm thinking to myself, sis, a little street and Muslim don't go together. Right?
Right.
So where do these untruths come from? And again, it comes from us straying off the path, the desires, what we're looking for. And where do these desires come from? Usually it comes from either our environment, what we're reading, what we're listening to, what we're seeing. And oftentimes we are getting caught up with TV series, Little Housewives of Atlanta, New Jersey, whoever the women are, right? And the examples that we're looking at are not examples for us as Muslim women. So when the wolves come, it's easy to fall in love with the wolf or to be devoured by a wolf because our principles, our morals, how we see our own selves is devaluated because we've spent so much time looking for gratification instead of the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So
Yeah. So I wanted to ask this question. Thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. One of the reasons why I wanted to do a perspective with a woman is because some of the ladies who listen to the podcast with Sheikh Amin was amazing. And I got the premise of what he said. Everyone didn't get it. Towards the end, it made a lot of sense to me what he was essentially communicating.
Right.
But a lot of women felt like it missed a couple aspects, which, you know, far as with women, even in the story, there was a little bit of discernment. There was a little bit of intuition. There was definitely some naivety, you know, from Little Red Riding Hood, but just the idea that women do have intuition, women are discerning. So just the idea of like, okay, you know, women are these naive ones that need to be saved by the huntsman.
Yeah.
Is some women felt like it missed a little bit of what women naturally have as sort of these safety parameters.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really amplified enough. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the idea of discernment and the skill of discernment that women do have. I think, like I said, she said, you know, what big eyes you have. Like, wait a minute, you know, like you don't look like grandma. I can feel it.
Oh, right.
You're telling me one thing, but I don't feel like, right, that thing that comes up with women.
Yeah.
Talk about that and let's also mention, how does a woman really harness the skill of discernment?
So number one, I think we should make the distinction between cultural expectations and religious identity. Okay. And the reason what we need to identify, because there's a big contradiction between religious principles and cultural expectations as women, period. Especially in the African American community, we still don't have a lot of generations of our family that are Muslim. And because of that, we're trying to see how Islam kind of fits in our way, but we're still looking for how can this fit culturally for me, right? Mm-hmm. But the righteous woman is one who, her religious identity is anchored in tawakkul, right? And so when you know that you trust in Allah, you have dignity, you have self-respect. And although some women say that they have these things, you can tell that they do not based on how they behave, right? And so a culture may say, hey, stay in a harmful marriage to preserve your honor, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what happens. Women do that. And then Islam also says, hey, well, don't harm yourself or others. And then it gives women the right for khula. What do we do? So then you'll see women challenging themselves between cultural expectations and religious identity. And the challenge lies between differentiating between what's the deen and what's the culture. And then the path is obscured by the societal fog that we have through all of these social media, what we're watching on TV, again, listening to, what we're accepting that is no longer on the path of the straight way. So what are some protective strategies that women can use for the discernment? Is number one, we have to develop spiritual discernment. We have to. It's not.
Hold on. What is it?
So spiritual discernment is number one, making dua regularly.
Okay.
And making dua for what? Guidance, 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 guidance. Stop asking everyone else about the guidance and ask Allah for the guidance, right? And it's okay sometimes to ask people, but the first trigger of guidance, dua should go you asking Allah, right? The second is istikhara. It's like we take this so light that like people only think of istikhara as like, oh, I'm only going to do it if I'm getting married or if I need to move to another country. But istikhara, the more that you do it, the more in tune you become with hearing Allah's voice, hearing Allah's message to you. This discernment begins to become clear. But if you never make dua, you never make istikhara, you never increase your dhikr, where's the spiritual discernment? Where's it coming from? Yeah. And then as Shahida so eloquently said in one of the talks recently, she was like, we have to stop cursing. Like that comes from a spiritual place of this is not okay. But when we begin to get okay in some of these things that we do regularly, where, you know, hey, I don't have to wear my scarf. Allah knows my heart, right? I can cuss if I want to, you know, it's not that big of a deal. Or, you know, I can talk bad about other people, you know, I would say this to their face. Those kinds of things we make excuses, and that is what? Veering off of the natural path, going back into what's easy, the gratification. And the gratification is that we want to do the specific thing, right? Then we, as women, we have to create emotional boundaries, and we don't do that at all, right?
We were not. Can I just pause, like slow you down just a little bit? Because I don't want people to miss what you're saying. But emotional boundaries, just the fact that we don't do that at all. We were not taught.
Yes.
Right? We're not conditioned that it is okay to set an emotional boundaries. That if I am being harmed, and you go ahead, you mentioned it. So first of all, I do think it's important for you to define it, because again, everyone doesn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So emotional boundaries for women is saying no is a sentence, right?
Right.
And it's not un-Islamic. So when we start thinking about a woman's right to choose, when it even comes to her having a spouse, a woman can say yes or no. She's given that right. And that alone lets us know that no has the strongest power, and women have to begin to use that word more often with spiritual discernment.
Right. With obedience.
Yes. And not using no to say that you're creating boundaries, because some people create boundaries, but really what they're doing is avoiding.
Right. Oh,
and knowing the difference between what is a boundary, and boundaries are safe for both people on both sides.
Healthy for both. Yes.
Right. Avoidance is I'm avoiding this person at all costs, and I'm saying it's a boundary, but it's really not. And boundaries have a strong sense of amana in them, a strong sense of trust. So when you set a boundary, the trust is there for you and for the person who the boundary you set. And if they trust you and you trust them, and you both trust the law, the boundary is easy.
Right.
And it's okay. It's not un-Islamic. I mean, it is not, it's not un-Islamic to say no. So like when we start thinking about all of these things that we as women have to create boundaries, when a brother starts saying, hey sis, you know, I just want to see your hair, you know, we about to get married anyway, right? Are you setting a boundary for that? You can, right? But if he then decides a week later that he doesn't want to go forward with the marriage, what's happened?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just so many different things, but boundaries for women are extremely important. And we just have to look at the examples of all of the women in Islam where they created emotional boundaries. And even when you think of one of the Prophet's wives, may Allah be pleased with him, she created an emotional boundary that, hey, she wanted to still be married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but she didn't want to she gave up her day. And some people don't realize that that's really creating an emotional boundary for her own self and her own protection. Why? Because she was like, you know what? It's better for me to at least be amongst the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than for me to indulge in an act that I really don't want to do anyway, right? She really didn't want to have physical intercourse with him anyway on a regular basis. She was older, right? But she set an emotional boundary for her own self. And she said, oh, no, it's okay. I'm going to let Aisha take these days. And some people see that as like, they may not like that, right? But she knew that she had to set some precedents for her own self in order to still rely and trust Allah in that situation. And so to me, that's beautiful.
Okay. Um, so I appreciate that. I do. I really do. And so, okay. So that discernment and that intuition that we have, first of all, I do just want to acknowledge that women do have like sort of like this extra sense, which I know that you're saying, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. I always say like Allah has given us certain things
Mm-hmm.
that helps us in the realm of safety. I always think like when I'm outside or I'm in a parking garage, there are things that I am so hyper aware.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
realize I'm more hyper aware than like even a male counterpart in certain in certain circumstances, especially if I am alone or I'm isolated, because it's like that intuition, or I can really sense if something unsafe is about to, occur. So that is also the point that I think we wanted to mention as it relates to, this idea of Little Red Riding Hood. Like, what does Little Red Riding Hood actually have in her toolbox?
Yeah.
Naturally, like we said, that intuition, that discernment, but how does she sharpen it? So I wanted to talk about the wolves in the context of Muslim women's lives. And I'm very cautious about this, Naima, because even with, Sheikh Amin, who is a man, as he was speaking about this, a lot of men felt beat up. I get a lot of feedback after my shows. They were like, wait a minute, we're not, hold up. We deal with wolves too. So this idea of the metaphorical wolves in
Mm-hmm.
the lives of Muslim women
Yeah.
and what that really looks like, and this idea of women really so my question is, how would you define the
Mm.
wolves that show up in the lives of Muslim women or women in general?
So for me, there's several different things that show up. Number one, I think that in the context, I'm just going to go back to the context that he was kind of relating to how, when he was talking about his wife. So women, of course, wolves show up in toxic relationships, masked as love, right? So this is one big thing in the community. Toxic relationships, masked as wolf. I mean, masked as love. That's a
I
wolf.
don't want to keep interrupting you, Naima, but I
Okay.
want to make sure that I'm even staying with you. When you say toxic relationships, what are we talking about?
Toxic relationships are anything that make you say no, but you don't say no out loud. And this is women knowing their own selves. So, toxic relationships are every time you want to speak your voice, you're told not to. Toxic relationships are every time you express yourself, someone is either yelling at you or demeaning you for being your own self. Toxic relationships are someone always telling you that you are the problem. Toxic relationships are when you don't feel safe regularly, or if you have twitches, or if you shake, or if you find yourself having stomach issues. It's because the body naturally begins to respond to you lying to your own self. And so, what women begin to do is that they'll start saying yes, yes, yes to have this Islamic concept of, I'm obedient, but you don't want to be in polygyny, right? It's like, why are you doing it? So you spend years and years and years, and then your body begins to break down because every time a situation comes up, you're saying the status quo type answer and not being truthful to your own self. And so that is a toxic relationship. And meaning toxic relationships are also things that you have within your own self with yourself. It's not just about the man. It's also what you have within yourself about yourself. So toxic relationships begin in you and they exude on the outside. And so this is when you begin to accept specific behaviors from people where you quote unquote said you had boundaries or you had non-negotiables, but you start throwing those out the window because you don't feel safe to accept them.
That's deep. The comment you just said, you're gonna get in a little bit of trouble.
I know.
Because some feel, right? Some feel as though that because the law says X, Y, and Z, that means that the Muslim woman has to endure it. She has to deal with this. She
Right.
has to deal with that. And that wouldn't be classified as a toxic relationship.
So endurance in any situation in Islam always has benefit, meaning that if we even look at the story of Asiya, she found contentment with her Lord in that situation.
Right.
So, yes, there may be some people who are throwing the red flag. Oh, she's talking about polygyny. I've been in polygyny personally. I don't have an issue with it. But there may be some women that are in that situation that are living an untruth. And so when you do not find contentment, meaning that despite, yeah, you may not want to be in it, but if you find contentment with your Lord, then there is some ease in that. But when you are constantly, again, feeling sick, starting to lose weight, beginning to not be able to sleep, the body keeps the score. The body is listening to what you are twitching on the inside, because you're saying these things to your head, but you're not saying them out loud. And
Your
the body,
truth.
yes,
Your
the body
Yeah.
begins to say, hey, you are not speaking your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And your body will begin to respond even when you don't. And so this again is, where do you find the level of contentment with your own self, with um your situation? And contentment is not enduring the unbearable so that you can say that you're going to get your reward with your Lord, because you might not be.
Yeah. Because what people fail to, and I love that you mentioned this, and this is, it's a touchy topic, but I think what people fail to understand is that a lot of times when you are in this sort of, like you said, suffering state, your body begins to react, but then the behaviors, because you got to cope with that, Naima. So
Absolutely.
now you have behaviors that are probably on the side of unhealthy and may lend into the side of sinful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we have so
Yeah.
so I really appreciate what you're saying. Okay, so going back to the wolves. Now you were mentioning toxic relationships. Okay.
Toxic relationships, you have manipulative friends. So there are friends who manipulate you on a regular basis, meaning that they know what they can get from you because you don't set boundaries with them. So I'm going to use you to, drive us around in your car, or, I'm going to use you to introduce me to these group of people because you're popular with those people. But really, I'm a manipulative type person. And because we women and sometimes learn this manipulative behavior through our environment, whatever, we think that it's okay and that it's safe. And we think that saying yes to manipulative people really is like us doing a good thing. But what we're doing is people pleasing. And people pleasing leads to illnesses in the body. Exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
People pleasing leads to illnesses in the body. And we have to stop thinking of all of this as like surface. No, this is about our overall health. So again, the lies that we tell ourselves begin to deteriorate our natural bodies. So toxic relationship, manipulative friends, false spiritual leaders. We have some false spiritual leaders who exploit women's trust. That is a real thing. It's not fake. And people, I do advise people to always make sure that when you are saying thing about a spiritual leader, that you have proof. We also cannot be going around in the community saying things that are false about people, because that is a wolf as well. And that's when the woman begins to show up as a wolf, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But yeah, women can be wolves too, right? You also have like in this capitalistic system where, women's bodies our commodities, our time, our labor, all of these things are wolves. The internal waswas that we have are wolves. And how do we get away from these things? We have to understand what the wolves are, and how can we stay on this serot and not get caught up in these wolves, and asking ourselves, is this our nafs, or is this us being able to understand that it's not our nafs, and what is the discernment spiritually?
Right. Absolutely. So I'm gonna just keep it simple for
Yeah.
a second. I'm gonna keep it simple for a second. There's a lot of Muslim women, women in general, who are they just they just want partnership. They want to find a good brother. They want to get married. And a lot of them have expressed just a feeling of like just overwhelmed. Like if they're looking, especially from the context of like all men are wolves, even though I know what he meant, and we'll get to that towards the end. He
Yeah.
really meant women, you need to have boundaries, meaning
Basically.
that don't go out there being silly, thinking people don't have appetites, people don't have nuffs, people
Absolutely.
are not seeking their own needs. That's just
Right.
human nature. Okay. So a lot of women, they just want to get a spouse, right? And you know, when it comes to looking, trying to discern, right? Like who's good for me, who's not, what are the red flags, what are the, a lot of times, a lot of sisters express it's just so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. And it's easy, I guess, for us to say, like, just stay on the path. But it's like, what does that really look like when I am really trying to find a good spouse? So my question to you is that how do we apply what you're saying when you say stay on the straight path? Okay. When it comes to identifying, you know, who's good in our life, who's good to be in our lives.
Number one, what are your values? What are your values? Women, we have strayed away from what are our values. What are your top 5 core values, you as an individual? Meaning that as a woman, my core values are number 1, honesty. Right. My core values are not anything economic. These are our characteristics that a person has to have at all times. And this is where you begin to see if you, the woman, begins to allow for someone to cheat on the values that you say that you have. So if I say I have values, well, one of my core values is honesty, but I catch him in a lie. But I like him. He's so, you know, but he gives me gifts. And so over time, what happens? You have strayed away from your own personal core values. And what happens is the lies begin to compound and compound and compound. And then you look up 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years later, whatever, and you're like, well, you know, sis, he's just done so many things to me. No, sis, you've done so many things to you because you broke your core values in the first place. What does self-respect and dignity look like for you? And you should align that with the Quran and the Sunnah, right? Not with what we see on social media, how, you know, women, you know, even Muslim women now, you know, it's more Muslim women that are covering, but now they're, you know, potty mouthing and, you know, having all of these other attributes that are not associated with Islamic values. And so when we say that we want to be Muslim, we have to align it with Islamic values. What about haya? Haya for our own self. Like, think of yourself as your own best friend. Would you be your own best friend? Some of the things that you say and do, would you want your friend to be that way? And if you can't be that way with your own self, then you need to think about how you're going to be that way with other people, and then holding other people to a stick that you yourself can't even hold yourself to. So like, when we start thinking about, again, looking for a spouse, you know, yeah, he has to make 6 figures. But can you make 6 figures, right? Not that you have to, but if a situation came and he passed away or something, what would you do? Do you have the fortitude and the strength to be able to, you know, get your own ends meet if needed, if necessary? So it's kind of like what you're requesting one person to do, make sure you can do it first. And that is super, super important, because you can't ask somebody else to do something that you can't do.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask a little bit about, because we talked a lot about, with the conversation with Imam Amin, we talked a lot about this idea of really valuing yourself as women and really understanding who you are as women and holding a standard from the beginning, right? I remember I used to say, and this is after, you know, I had a couple of fumbles, you know, if I could be transparent about that. I remember, you know, when I was courting, in the courting phase, I was very strict about, like, I had a, you know, I put boundaries in place about those early conversations. Why? Because I'm very, like, I love words of affirmation. I love the woo 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 woo. I'm just like any other
Yeah,
woman.
like any
So
woman. Right,
I
right.
can't, we can't be doing all the chit chatting, like that. So my question to you is that how does that woman stay in line with her values
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning? Because what Imam Amin said is the moment that there is something, you bring it back in line. You don't let it slide from the beginning. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you need to have a somewhat of a tribe as well, a wiser woman than yourself, meaning older. Like, so when you feel like you need to talk to somebody, hey, I'm having these specific feelings, they can pull you back. What we've also found as Muslim women is that we're friends with our friends, but sometimes we don't pull each other's coat, right? And so you're telling me about a conversation that you all maybe had through text messaging. And I'm telling you, sis, stop text messaging that brother all day. And you're like, we're just talking. So you're saying, so basically what you're doing, you're taking what someone who is supposed to be looking out for your best interest is saying to you to cover and protect you. You're basically saying that really doesn't matter.
Right.
And so that's also how Allah lets the human being ride on their own ego. If you feel no shame, then do as you please, right? Because we can't micromanage everybody and their feelings and things like that. But as a woman, when things are starting to get off the rails, you know what red flags look like. And what we have to do is, again, tapping into the basira, the discernment. We have to be able to say, you know what, this is a red flag, and write it out. Like, the red flag that I'm seeing is, and just write it out. Have a journal of all your feelings so that you can identify it instead of pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. And then you get married to somebody, you're in a relationship, and 15, 20, 30 years later, you've basically been in an abusive relationship, and now you no longer are your own self, right? And you're trying to get out, and you're like, well, this person has done all these things to me, when really it is you who has done those things to your own self because you strayed away from the path.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. I want to be real with you though. Like, this sounds good. No, hold on. Say with me. It sounds good.
Right.
But from a very real perspective,
Mm-hmm.
from my own personal experience and just the experience of so many women who I've coached or just kind of taken on their stories just by running this platform. And there is a common story of women who are on a path, who stay on the path.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the, whether it's a wali. I mean, I know Sheikh Amin mentioned wali here. And I'm not going to stray outside of this box. I'm going to do things the correct way. I'm going to have some boundaries.
What does that mean, though?
I'm going to set some limits. Well, hold on a second.
Okay.
Let me, because this is a common thing.
Okay.
And I get into the marriage, which is a sacred covenant. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so now sisters in the marriage, or a brother, but we're talking about women right now. Sisters in the marriage, maybe she has a child. She's in it. It's a covenant. It's, this is my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then a person starts to exhibit behaviors that probably was present. We'll acknowledge it probably was present.
Yep.
But for some reason, okay, the behavior that is very overt, obvious, and very almost unbearable to deal with is now here. And now this woman is like, wait a minute, I have this baby. I got to keep my family together. I love him. I don't want to be out here by myself. I don't want to be unprotected. I can't do this all over again. Naima, what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a flipping of the script, or like, just something that kind of happens. Like I said, you may have micro signs, but not everyone has the consciousness to pick up certain behaviors, especially if they're underneath the surface.
Yeah.
That woman that's like, wait a minute, I can't, like, what you talking about, these boundaries and all that, like this, I just got to keep my family together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this. When you begin to notice the thing that you didn't notice in the beginning, you're growing. So alhamdulillah for that, right? So the growth comes because you as a woman have evolved. So now that you're evolving, you have to ask yourself, where do I want to go in my evolution? right? Because what we do is we get so focused on the person and we forget about ourselves. So when you find all of this stuff starts coming up for you, focus on yourself. Continue to evolve and build yourself up. Again, going back to discernment, going back to sticking close to revelation, staying away from doubt and confusion, situations like that. Yes, you're going to have those in the marriage and the relationship. But as these things start to percolate, as you become a better gym for your own self, some of this stuff is going to fall by the wayside anyway.
Ooh.
That's the truth. But if you keep lying to yourself, you'll never get out. But the truth is, if you continue to delve into yourself, lean on Allah, develop your spiritual discernment, all of this other fluff will begin to fall by the wayside, and that situation is going to fall off anyway. Why? Because you're elevating at a rate so much higher than you used to. And once you're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the frivolous type stuff, don't focus on other people, focus on you, because you can only change you. So it's stated that when a woman changes herself, everything around her changes. It is absolutely 100% true. So if you want a different life, change you. Change you. Stop focusing on the other person. And men that actually love their women over time, when they see you changing and refining, they will change and refine as well. And those who are the wolves, guess what? They won't. They can't stay. Eventually, they're going to keep saying that you're the problem. All of the abusive, toxic relationship types talk is going to also begin to rise to the surface. And that's when you'll be able to say, this is no longer healthy. And Allah does not want us to be in relationships that are unhealthy. And I'm not saying relationships that are going through ups and downs. I'm saying relationships that are unhealthy, meaning that you are verbally being abused, physically being abused, emotionally being abused, spiritually being abused, where someone is like taking the religion and throwing ayats at you and always beating you up with the Quran. That is not healthy. Love is patient, kind. It doesn't boast. It's gentle, right? Love is also stern, direct, honest, but love is not abusive. So when you find yourself in those abusive type relationships, that is the time to get out.
SubhanAllah. I do appreciate that. I think that was very insightful. And I think that was a really important point to mention here. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the protective strategies that we need in order to navigate this world of the metaphorical wolves.
This is where I'm going to start getting the bad comments here, because this is where I believe that women should have their own agency. We have our own agency anyway, whether we're married or not, but women do not possess their own agency. We become so passive in making sure that we please everyone else except for ourselves. This is not about being selfish. It says that you have to go to Allah pleasing and well pleased. And a part of that, you have to be pleased with your own self. How do you do that if you're always pleasing other people? And then you find yourself being in disharmony and having dis-ease with decisions that you're making regarding people pleasing. So what about your own agency as a woman? Number one, do you have your own money? Not because you want to run off and leave him at the drop of a dime, but do you have your own money? Because many of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ had their own money because they were their own agent. We have to be interdependent and independent. Interdependent and independent. Why? Because even in the Quran, it talks about how you yourself are responsible for coming up with money to pay for your own death. How do you do that if you don't have your own money and your own agency?
Right.
So we have to have our own agency. We have to understand our own, number one, knowledge. Women have to be knowledgeable. Stop waiting for someone else to teach you this religion. Study it on your own. Islam is over with, right? And again, we also know that there are different hadith that talk about educating women. Why? Because the woman is the center of the education. She is the the ummah. So what she knows, everyone will know.
Right.
Women have
Absolutely.
gotten away from educating themselves. They're
Yeah.
just being fed with like social media, and they don't want to do anything that contributes to developing them in their whole self.
Right.
So, meaning
Absolutely.
that it is okay if you cook. It is okay if you clean. It is okay if you hang out with your friends, but have discernment and not doing it all the time, right? Because some people, they're like, I hang out with my friends all the time. Then you have no time for your husband, right? So the discernment has to be there. You have to have discernment to spend time with your children. You are a parent. You should be cultivating them and having a relationship with your children as well. And so when we're not cultivating and having agency for all the areas of our life, we find ourselves being tricked by the immediate gratification of the wolf. And that is not lasting
Yeah.
at
And
all.
I love that you said immediate gratification. I've heard you say this a couple of times because it's the idea of being satiated, right? Like I haven't, this is the one thing, Naima, that drives me crazy. It's like this idea where I hear a lot of times, because I deal with a lot of the
Yeah.
singles. I love dealing with
Mhm.
the singles. I love you guys. But I hear I'm waiting for the one, right? I'm waiting for the one. And I'm always curious, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And really, when you dig in deep into that, it's like someone that can kind of do the work for me. I want you to come in here, be all together. You're nice. You're kind. You have all these perfect attributes. I don't have to have boundaries. I don't have to raise up my standards and do the hard stuff because Naima, it's not easy to uphold standards and boundaries. Usually,
Yeah.
it's just not easy when you have to do the hard work of being responsible for
Yeah.
yourself and keeping the amana between you and your maker, no matter
Yeah.
what relationship you're in or navigating.
Absolutely.
And so, what's really interesting about this conversation is that this idea of satiating, this instant gratification, because if I'm not doing taking care of my responsibilities, I'm doing what you just said. I'm
Mm.
lying to myself
Yeah.
that I'm all together, and I'm not, because I'm not taking care of that amana, right? I'm putting it
Right.
on somebody else.
Right.
I don't
Mm.
have the agency.
Yeah.
And now I have to satiate it. So now, as long as I got a husband, I can say I got a husband. Now he might be crazy, child. He might be all kinds of stuff going on, cheating, lying, be all kinds of stuff. But I got a husband.
And it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You know how they say I can do bad all by myself?
That's very true.
That's exactly what they're doing. So being with someone who is still not exhibiting going back to your personal values. When you have a list of personal values, when you have a list of what you want your life to look like, when you have a list of what type of wife you want to be, when you have a list of what type of mother you want to be, when you have a list of what type of friend you want to be, when you have a list of what type of community member you want to be, you can't stray away from those if you've written those down.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is writing. Writing is so quintessential to being on the right path. It says that when you write something down,
Yeah.
the chance for it becoming true is almost 90%.
Yeah.
So if you're just wham bam, thank you, man, whatever, going through life and thinking that, oh, it's in my mind and I understand. No, write this stuff down so that when you go back and look at your journal and you're wondering why that relationship is no longer in its good place, and then you go back and look at your values and say, oh, you know what? Safety was one of my values. And when he started to, come in the house and was drinking and smoking, that made me not feel safe. But I let him do it anyway. No, most men, if they love you, if you say, you have, sweetheart, smoking and drinking is a part of my core values. Either you stop smoking and drinking, or we have to go on a break because this is not healthy for me. And if he's like, oh, babe, that's right. That's a boundary. And then if he crosses it, you have to be okay with making the consequences stick.
That's the part. That's
Yeah.
the part. It's that fear. It's that fear. And this goes into this idea of agency. And I wanted to, when you said that, I want to make sure we understand what you're saying, because there's a lot of misconceptions. I think you mentioned culturally, religiously,
Yeah.
when it comes to women. I'm sure you triggered some people when you said women have to have agency, because there's a lot of misconceptions that, like, what does that mean? Is she not under her husband? Is she not, we kind of start to think that way. But what are, first of all, I want to ask you, what are some of these misconceptions that we really need to work through when it comes to Muslim women's agency, especially in difficult relationships, right? And when, like I said, when things are really out of sorts and a woman thinks, well, I can't, because this is when I've taught boundaries, Naima, people are like, I can't do that, I'm a wife. I can't tell him to stop drinking because I'm a wife. I can't, like, really feel like they have zero agency because Islam says you don't. What are some of the, let's go. What are some of those misconceptions that we have about that?
I think the misconceptions is, number one, truth. One misconception is that you can always uphold the truth for or against your own self, right? It's not about making another person feel less than. It's about, we're in this together, and me as your wife, my agency as a woman is to protect you. I am your garment. When I see that you have filth on you, I should be able to come to you and tell you, hey, we need to clean this. This needs to get clean. And if you can't do that, that's an issue. This is why we have so many unhealthy relationships, because really, what healthy relationships look like is not something that we're existing in. And you know how we know that? Because of how the community is. The community is just a manifestation of what is happening in our homes. So when you see there's disruption in the community, you know that there's a lot of disruption happening.
The homes are raggedy.
You don't have a lot of great homes and then the community is messed up. No, it's a reflection of what people are doing in their own homes. And again, this goes back to laying it out. We're getting married. What is our goal? What are our values? What are our non-negotiables? How are we going to be parents? What are we going to instill into our children? We just haven't done this in generations. Like,
absolutely
we used to do it, and now we aren't doing it anymore. And so what's showing up is that, I like to say, boo-boo the fool is showing up, meaning that it's just like anything goes. We have had traumatic experiences as adults, as young people. I know even as a woman, I know even my own self, I've struggled with, not wanting to disappoint people. So maybe I will let them do something that I know isn't right.
Right.
Yeah, girl, I had to get over that. That was like, that's the old me. Like, what, girl? What? Like,
can I share what my kryptonite or saboteur has been? It's like, I always feared the punishment, or maybe the consequence of, especially with the person that you love, or the person, this could be any type of relationship we have, family, friends, colleagues, being punished, which is sometimes a real thing that happens. People withdraw their love, they withdraw, they silent treatment, they escape, they do all of these things to escape that accountability.
And this is also important for us to understand I know people get triggered by all of these new words that we're using. We say saboteurs and all these things, but these are real behaviors. Psychology, sociology, these are real topics that exist. I have my degree in sociology. I love studying people. Studying people is consistent. The principle of how people exist is consistent. That's why when you read in the Quran, in the Bible, in the Torah, the penalty for the people is the same. It's consistent. People continue to do the same thing over and over and over. And what does Allah say? If you don't get it right, then I'm going to basically tear down this whole establishment and bring up a new people. Because people are consistent. And how do you break free from that consistency of going against and staying on the right path? You have to understand what your triggers are. We have to understand. We can't keep saying, oh, that's not me. I don't have any of that stuff. That's just made up stuff. No, these are real things that we're dealing with in the community and at home, where, number one, you fear abandonment. So you'd rather be abused in a relationship than someone leaving you.
Ooh.
Number two, this is real stuff. Number two, you have sexual addiction, but you say that you are okay with polygyny, but what you're really doing is marrying 8 women, and every
Ooh,
2 months you're marrying somebody else because you have sexual addiction, which
come on.
is trauma from your childhood. Stop
Come on.
being a man who is, oh, I'm in polygyny. No, Negro. You have sexual trauma. I mean, we need to call it what the spade is, girl. I mean, all of these things that are happening in the community on women, when women say, oh, the men are preying on us, you have to have your own understanding of the religion.
Please.
If you don't understand the religion, you are going to be manipulated. Yes,
on.
the wolf is going to come and get you. It is your responsibility as a Muslim woman to study the religion. It's no one's job to bring it to you and to spoon feed you with a spoon. If you don't know what your rights are as a Muslim woman when it comes to your mahar, your inheritance, whether or not you can work, whether or not you can be a mom, whether or not you can have friends over, whether or not you can dress that way, whether or not you can go out and stay out after Maghrib. If you don't know your own agency as a woman, you're the problem, not him. Because men will manipulate uneducated women. That's why it's important to educate our women so that they cannot be manipulated.
Ooh, come on, Naeem. I just feel like the whole mic, like, listen,
girl.
No, this is the crux that I wanted to get to. The real stuff of what's actually happening. When we talk about Little Red Riding Hood wolves, we're not talking about good guys versus bad guys. We're talking about stuff that each and every one, if we're really honest and we really sit with ourselves, our stuff,
our own personal stuff.
And one of the reasons why Dope Muslim Woman has always kind of put a hyper focus on relationships, because where do you get to see your stuff? Right there. In your relationship, especially in your most intimate relationships. Absolutely. How you parent, how you are a wife, how you are a husband. That is where your stuff is. That's where it exists.
Absolutely. And it's half your religion, because it's half of you going through all this struggle to
half you getting your stuff together.
To change it. People, we need to stop using all of these words where I'm not going to change. Yes, you are. You change every single day. That is the obligation of a Muslim. That's why we have Ramadan.
Right. Right. Good. Give us all a spanking, Naima.
I mean, you're going through Ramadan for what? To not change? Just so you can not eat and drink, but then you're going to go back to the same thing? No. Ramadan is like a jump start to a new you every year. And you should really have a plan of what you're going to do during Ramadan, so that after Ramadan is over, you can take that behavior and that whatever you were doing and trickle it along your life. So really, you should be like this super leveled up human being 30 years into Ramadan, 5 years into Ramadan. Not as soon as Ramadan is over, oh, I need to watch, Real Housewives of Atlanta so I could catch up. Or, I need to go back to the old things that you were doing before. And if your soul doesn't say, this isn't right any longer, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I doing? Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. I mean, it's I think what you're saying is really powerful. And sometimes I think we don't have these real honest conversations
with ourselves.
Right. And you mentioned this idea of finances. And I wanted to just ask about this for a second, because a lot of times, as Muslims, we're like, oh, we think, we're not going to talk a lot about money, right? We're not going to talk about the dunya. But where I see women stuck is because they don't have their affairs in order.
Oh, absolutely.
The finances.
That
financial piece, which is very important. And the idea that I rely solely on my husband, and I'm not, people do, I had a time where I was just taking care of my kids. My husband was the sole provider. And there was seasons for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my agency with my finances is extremely important to me as a woman, and what I'm cultivating. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's your specialty.
Yeah. So when I started thinking about women in finance, number one, you have to have your own finance. It's a requirement as a human being. Take male and female away from it. The agency of you as a human being is that you have to have your own finances. You can't rely on someone else. Why? Totally. That's why I said we have to be interdependent and independent. When you totally rely on someone else, you remove from your own individual self the right to choose. Because you can't make decisions if you don't have anything. You can't make decisions if you don't have anything. How are you going to make a decision if you want to better yourself and go to school if you don't have any money? And then if you're feeling like you're a people pleaser, you're not going to go and ask someone who you're not feeling safe with in a relationship if they can pay for your education. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? And so also feeling like you have to be the one that, oh, I want a man that does all of these things. Like he has the money, I can do whatever I want to with it. No, where's the discernment? You as a woman have to have some sense of discernment with even his money.
Right.
And then we have to go back to his money is our money and our money is our money. But inside of his money as our money, there is nafaqah, right? Only the essentials, the bare necessities. Maslow, if nobody else knows anything, go study Maslow's law. Okay, you don't want to study Arabic, go back, go to the English, go study Maslow's law. The basic necessities is his responsibility to you. He doesn't have to buy you that $200 bag.
Right.
He doesn't have to buy you all of these expensive clothes. He can buy you clothes that are modest, nice, and guess what? Alhamdulillah. And if you want to go above and beyond that, that's where you have your own money. But having your own money is quintessential. Studies have shown that people who make a minimum of $75,000, the level of safety has increased by more than 50%. Meaning people, that's not a lot of money, really. $75,000 household, people feel more safe. And so if you're operating in a household that's $25,000, $50,000, I literally used to make $8,000 a year, and my kids were in school.
Yeah.
What was I doing? $8,000. What was I doing? We still had food. They still had clothes. We still did things, but it was just limited. Like you have to be able to navigate through all of the ups and downs. And through all of the ups and downs, you also have to be able to seek control through fear and seduction. Because you, as a person, when you're fearful of a thing, then you will always get trapped by the wolf.
Yeah.
When seduction is the thing that you're attracted to, you're going to get trapped by the wolf. When you, as a person, as a woman, like you begin to become the wolf, right?
Yeah.
You're now preying on other people's vulnerabilities, specifically because someone did this to you.
Yeah, of course.
And you have not taken any time to heal. I know, again, these are words that people are like, what about the healing part? The healing is going back to your relationship with your Lord. Going back to you and Allah, just you and Allah. Look up those verses in the Quran. I always tell people when you look at all of these stories in the Quran, they are literally our stories.
Right.
There's a lot of stories about single mothers. There are no stories about single fathers in the Quran. Where is it? None. No stories about single fathers in the Quran. None. Where? Where is it? This is important because we're getting in a society where the roles are shifting. Like, oh, the man can take care of the children by himself and the woman doesn't have to do anything. And the woman feels like she has to be like sitting on this throne and I don't have to contribute to anything and blah, blah, blah. And some of this is white culture. It's not even Islamic culture. So not understanding what dynasties have done previously, not understanding sociological and philosophical ideas and concepts that are not in alignment with Islam is important. Why? So that you don't get trapped into saying, oh, I'm a Muslim, but really culturally, you're living the life of something that is not in alignment with Islam, which is off of the path. It's off the path. So we have to get back to that.
Yeah. Beautiful. I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. Okay, so I wanted to kind of wrap this conversation up and talk a little bit about, mashallah, I think you really talked a lot about accountability as far as, you know, that Little Red Riding Hood piece and really being the informed Little Red Riding Hood, the one who stays on the path. Because at the end of the story, and you know, it's a fairy tale, whatever, but at the end of the story, at least the one I read, there's a lot of different versions, you know, she, after the wolf is killed, etc., she then goes out again and she stays on the path, like she learned her lesson.
Right.
So I did want to talk about the learning of the lesson the learning of the lesson, and really, how do you really stay this course? You know, a lot of times we got to get bit and eaten a little bit,
Yeah,
gobbled up a little
I'll
bit
keep bringing it to you. Yeah.
before we get it. But learning that hard lesson and staying on the path, even if, like you said, it's isolating, it's
Yeah.
lonely,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't satiate. Yeah.
At
Mm-hmm.
all. So when we start thinking about isolation, this is really a concept in Islam that we really don't practice enough. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would go to the Mount Hira for a reason. He was going into isolation specifically for remembrance and reflection. And it's highly recommended for us as Muslims to do this, because when you begin to reflect, you'll start, what starts coming up in your mind is like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have did that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The contemplation is so high when you're in an isolated state. But when you're always moving and around people and doing all these things, you're not reflecting on anything. So isolation is super important. So when you start thinking about how can I hold myself accountable when you know that you've done something that is against your own soul, meaning that it's not feeling good, go into isolation. Go into that state of isolation and write down what you're feeling. Write it down. And then for some of you, go and seek help. Go get some help. It's okay to go get some help. And one of the things that I know people are like, oh, I need to go and talk to the imam about it. It is okay to go to a mental health therapist, a psychiatrist for some people, because you might have mental chemical imbalances in your brain where the Quran is not enough. Like, let's just be real. Like, you have to have some type of chemical substance that settles your brain so that you can think properly. That is a real thing in life. And then when you're going to seek therapy, looking and being consistent with it is important if you want to change. And so when you start saying, okay, did I learn the lesson? The lesson is that, number one, accepting that you have to change. You can't be the best version of yourself without shedding the old you from yesterday. You can't be the best version of yourself without shedding the old person from yesterday, not from 10 years ago, from yesterday. Every morning when you wake up, it's a new opportunity for you to be your best self. And you say, okay, what don't I want to do? I don't want to do this particular behavior regularly. So when it comes up and you keep doing it, you have to tell yourself, okay, number one, let me write down what triggered this, right? Let me write down the feeling that I'm getting when this happens. Let me write it down. If you're doing it with your friends, then discuss it with your friends. Your friends should be able to be honest with you and say, girl, yeah, you kind of get on my nerves when you do such and such and such. Or, they're like, I'm just so used to whatever they say. But hopefully you have friends that will be willing to work through it, not desert you. Because there's some people who are just like, I'm done with this. I'm just going to desert that person.
That minute you have a hard time, they're gone.
They're gone. Or even after years of like hoping that you would change and you don't, they leave you. Right. And so this happens to people that, again, have not spent a lot of time on self-reflection. So every lesson that is learned, self-reflect, self-reflect, self-reflect. Go back to dhikr, going back to dua, going back to the revelation itself. Right. And I know some people think of this as like, this is so dreamy, right? The with bickering and the Quran and things like that. But it's really the Quran itself has healing in the rhythm of reciting the Quran, right? Even if you're not, if you yourself can't recite the Quran, if you listen to it on a regular basis, your physical body will begin to manifest and change.
Yeah.
Your physical body just from the rhythms of the Quranic recitation. So when we just trade some 30 minutes of listening to YouTube music to 30 minutes of Quran, even if you fall asleep listening to the Quran at night, your body will begin to change. And when your body begins to change, then your mind begins to say, what? Oh, really? Clarity. What? Oh, okay. And then when things begin to become really, really, really clear, the stuff that you used to put up with, you no longer were going to be putting up with anyway. And as I stated earlier, when you change, everything around you begins to change. So it's all about accepting accountability for your own self and your own life, because ultimately, in the end, it's between you and your Lord.
That's it. It's between you and your Lord. Beautiful. Well, I deeply appreciate the conversation. I deeply appreciate the introspection. And, what I'm getting from this conversation is just the deep responsibility that we have over our own lives.
Yeah.
Like I said, we are returning to Allah. Like, and we can't blame the wolf. Like I said, there's no victim and villain in our stories, really. It really is about our responsibility with Allah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's powerful. That's a powerful conclusion to this, because again, we're not, and I hope people understand the bigger message here. This is not about men are bad, women are, innocent little victims. That's not what I don't think. That's definitely not what Naima said. And that's
No.
also not what Sheikh Amin said.
Yeah.
No one said that, really. But we are talking about behaviors that we know are common, that
Yeah.
we know are there, right? That we don't always address.
Yeah.
That absolutely, that leads to us being off the path.
Yeah. And really, when you start thinking, the last thing really quickly, when you start thinking about like getting off of the path, it's a pattern that you yourself are doing as well. So
Sure.
think of like, okay, how can I keep away from this consistent pattern and stop blaming other people? Again, it's not just like it's the brother, or it's not just like his family. I mean, because the dynamic of him and his family is the same. It's learned behavior. They're doing some of the same things. So you have to ask yourself again, write down, what are my values? What do I believe? What kind of wife do I want to be? What kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of friend do I want to be? What kind of servant to my Lord do I want to be? And uphold those after you have written them down. And when you find yourself deviating away from them, you need some friends to gonna pull you back with that rope, right? Because you can hold on to the rope of Allah, but you need some people in this life as well to bring you back, and do it in a loving way. Like Rasulullah said that when you admonish someone, that you admonish them. Number one, you know them.
Right.
You don't admonish people, you know them. And then when you know them, you also do it with loving and kindness. And yes, it can be direct, but it has to be direct to where it's still soft. It's a soft approach, not that it's so hard, because you can turn people away from Islam that way. We don't want to do that.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful piece of advice. Like, mashallah, I'm very grateful. I have incredible friends. I have incredible people. Naima's one of them. Naima knows I'm going through something. She'd be like, Sabrina, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I have incredible friends. Good company is so important. Good company is and I'm very intentional about the people who I choose to have as people who I'm confiding in, people who I'm getting advice from. I am very, very intentional. And that is extremely, remember, that's a reflection of you. Like, the people who are in your circle are a reflection of where you are.
Absolutely.
So that it is very, very important in this process. So thank you so much, Naima. Any last bits of advice before we go? Any last bits of advice you want to offer?
Yeah. So the last bit of advice is that do a tally or do an overview of your current family. Okay. Starting with your own self. This is what I'm encouraging everybody to do. And this isn't anything about like negatively, like, trying to make it seem like your family is just so dysfunctional. But if you had to ask yourself, what is the one thing that I want to stop doing? The one behavior I want to stop doing, right? And sometimes ask your family and friends, because they can tell you the one thing they want you to stop doing. And then ask them, what is the one thing you really want me to start doing? The one thing I can stop doing, and the one thing you want me to start doing. And I think that as we begin to start doing more of the things that our family is looking for us to do, meaning that it has some spiritual discernment. We have our own agency with it, that we're asking Allah, and that we're seeking Allah's guidance in all of those things. We're making istikhara. You'll find that you're going to see some beautiful flowers begin to bloom. So don't be a little Red Riding Hood and continuing to follow into the same traps. But the traps are all about where your mindset is. So
Yeah.
again, if you want to get out of those traps, change your mindset. And that needs to align with the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah.
So just to make sure I'm understanding this tally, so you are asking different family members
Yeah.
okay, and you're taking
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, because everybody sees you in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people see you consistent. Like it may be that they're saying the same thing, and especially when they're saying the same thing. That's the one thing you really need to work on. So when people are saying, "Okay, you're always so defensive," well, defensive may be that you're that way because you're needing a sense of protection wherever the defensiveness comes from. But how can you stop being defensive every single time somebody asks you a question? You're right. How can you stop being that way? And then there are so many books out here, tons and tons and tons of books. Stop listening to and scrolling on social media and listen to some audiobooks, self-help audiobooks, both Quranic and just regular self-help. That is really going to help you change and elevate to the best version of you. Books are the way to change your life. And we have to learn that it is okay to learn to have the life that we want.
Alhamdulillah. I love it. Well, I appreciate you so much, Naima. May Allah bless you and increase you. Thank you so much for providing us clarity. Little Red Riding Hood. We can finally put Little Red Riding Hood to bed.
Yeah, she can go night night. Take off that hood.
Night. Okay. That wolf, we gotta.
Yeah, throw the wolf away. And
get the wolf
women,
out of here.
Don't become the wolf.
Don't become the wolf.
Don't become the wolf.
That's what happens when Little Red Riding Hood strays too far off the path. She becomes the wolf because that's the only way she thinks she can kind of have some agency.
Yes.
So that's a whole nother conversation. Well, we appreciate you so much, Naima. May Allah bless you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for the conversation. I'm going to take one comment, and that was from Sasha. And she said, this is why in the Black Muslim community, we must constantly address the generational trauma from slavery specifically. This is the root of our maladaptive behaviors within our culture. And I think you touched a little bit on that as well.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that, Sasha. All right. Well, we hope that you have an incredible night. Thank you so much for joining the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.